Roadhouse. An ex-UFC fighter with a dark past takes a job as a bouncer at a Florida Keys roadhouse. The roadhouse is regularly harassed by local gangsters, so testosterone must flow and blood must be shed. So, real quick, I don't have any nostalgia invested in the original 1989 Roadhouse. I saw it for the first time only about 2 years ago, and you know what? It surprisingly holds up. Yes, Patrick Swayze had a flawed arc, the last 10 minutes were ridiculous and kind of felt out of place, and the love story was painfully thin. But the action was fun. I really enjoyed the characters. Sam Elliott and Patrick Swayze were totally badass, and it's a real fun product of his time. I like it. So how do I feel about this remake? Well, here's my favorite thing about it. To prepare for this review, I rewatched the first film the other night, and it made me realize that I want to buy it on 4K Blu-ray. That's my favorite thing about this remake. Now, it does have a good first half. Jake Gyllenhaal, I don't know how to say his last name, whatever, we'll call him Gyllenhaal. He's awesome, as usual. When is this guy ever the weak link of a film, right? He's a physical specimen. You totally buy that he could take on Conor McGregor. His past is very painful. I did care about him, and I liked his chemistry with some of the locals. This is the type of guy who will put you in hospital, but he'll be kind enough to drive you there. I was so into that. All of his fight scenes have good choreography and camera tricks, and the film looks lush overall, man. This Florida setting, it just works. It's a real pretty film. I also appreciate how, as a remake, it didn't over-rely on callbacks to the original film. It does stand on its own 2 feet. But of course, it does do some things similarly to the first film, to a fault at times. The thin romance from the first film, it's here and it's worse. And some of the beta henchmen would give that polar bear coward a run for his money.
Made for each other.
But then it sadly got worse. The film honestly began to plummet after the first half. Conor McGregor will put some people off because of how cartoony he is. But I honestly loved him. He's easily my favorite part of this film. He just had so much fun shooting this. He was great in the action scenes. Obviously, he is a UFC champion. But he's very funny as well. He was like a GTA character. He added so much energy and chaos to the screen. I was so into him. The problem is, he wasn't used enough. It takes an hour for him to get a brilliant introduction. Great introduction. But then he doesn't get enough screen time after that. He's so underused. He's overshadowed by the boring mastermind villains, and I really hated them. I wish McGregor just took their place. They didn't need to be in this film. On top of that, the last half becomes a tonally confusing mess. Gyllenhaal was such a likable guy, but then he transformed into almost like a serial killer. I don't know what they were thinking there. Sometimes he's serious and dark, but then he goes into Deadpool mode and cracks some real bad jokes when doing some nasty shit. And the action scenes become crazy, and not in a good way. I have no idea what they were thinking when they wrote that yacht sequence. I think, is this a remake of Roadhouse or Bad Boys? Is murdering people right or wrong? Is it grounded or over the top? Well, I can't tell you because this film bloody confused me. In the end, Roadhouse isn't a bad film, but it is confused. It doesn't know what type of film it wants to be, and it adds way too much to its simple premise. On its own terms, it's confusing and tonally all over the place, but as a remake, it's kind of pointless, because the only thing it does better than the original is the kick-ass fight scenes. There just wasn't enough of them to sustain the whole film. Conor McGregor was a very welcome addition in my opinion, but he was just too underused, and Jake Gyllenhaal just wasn't enough to keep this film afloat. And also, there is a mid-credit scene, and it would have got me juiced if I was a fan of this film. But sadly, I don't want a sequel to this remake, so it didn't do much for me. I'm gonna give Roadhouse a 5 out of 10. Just stick with the original, guys, and if you haven't seen the original, go watch it. It still holds up. Thanks for watching, guys. Stay jiggy. the better appreciates it.